The days seem long, but the Christmases go fast. And before you know it, they're out of the house.
Yeah.
Pretty soon they'll be gone. So don't put off what you can't do later. Parents that wait till their kids pride long enough and then give them whatever they want, all they've done is reinforce that behavior. They don't realize it, but they just want that pain and that noise to go away, so they give in. But what they don't realize is if you'll learn to be constant and saying no and yes at the right times, after a while your kids don't play those games because they know you're constant.
Well, Jeff, why don't you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Jeff Flamm. I'm probably a serial entrepreneur as you'll find because I've started maybe 7 or 8 companies over my career and had some good exits and some I still run.
Awesome. And tell me about your family. How long have you been married and how many kids and all that?
Okay. I've been married 49 years. We have 5 sons and 1 daughter, so 6 kids. And we're expecting our 26th grandchild this summer.
Wow. I have 24 cousins, so similar on my mom's side alone. Yeah. Okay, and then what are the age ranges of your 6 children? And where does your daughter lie?
My daughter's at the end. That's why we have 6. My oldest son is 48, and then my daughter's probably 33.
Okay, 15 years. Similar to ours. I mean, our kids are 4 years apart. Sounds like yours are 2 to 3, 2 to 4-ish?
Yeah.
Okay. And where are all your kids located today?
Well, our 5 sons live within 10, 12 minutes of us here. They're either in Sandy or Draper area of Utah. And our 1 daughter, she's up in Seattle. We just got back last night from visiting her.
And what kind of professions are they in?
All 5 boys got their master's degrees. And most of them started out as sometime a C-level executive with companies. But one by one, they've all broken up and started their own.
Wow.
So they all own their own companies now.
All 6 of them?
Yeah, and they're kind of in real estate-based businesses, either real estate development, land development, plumbing, house flipping, and one of them's a big general contractor. He started his own contracting firm.
Okay. And is that what you did?
Oh, well, I've been in land development. So I built 3 different business parks with a couple of partners.
So they kind of grew up around real estate and it felt comfortable to them?
Yeah, and I think they saw I was an entrepreneur and I could kind of do what I wanted. And if I wanted to make more money, go work harder. They kind of liked that model. And one by one, as they started their own businesses, the ones that were CFOs and COOs with bigger companies, they're kind of like, oh, all I do is work. And my brothers have flexibility. And I think they liked that. So they decided to leave and do their own thing.
I find that interesting that they all went to college, but they all ended up working for themselves anyway. What was the culture in your household when they were still at home around college? Was it just expected that they would go?
Well, my wife and I both graduated from college, right? And sit on a couple boards, advisory boards at universities at Weber State and at UVU, Utah Valley. We've always pushed education is really important. My wife was an educator. She taught junior high. So education was just expected. You go on and get your education. And it's interesting, 2 of them graduated from Oxford with their master's degrees. So, they're highly sought after for C-level, C-suite positions. And so they both went to startups, been going for a while, and they brought them in. And they were able to see some pretty good exits there. But then eventually they just decided they wanted to be their own bosses. So they left the corporate world.
I've noticed it's hard to grow up around that and taste it and not go back to it,
Yeah, I think that's really true. Most people who have had entrepreneurial dads or dads in real estate have kind of followed them in that kind of thing a lot because they saw their lifestyle. So it's been really good. I'm really proud of them because everybody that knows my boys know they've done it on their own. Dad hasn't handed it to them. They've all gone and started their own thing. They worked for me for a period of one of my companies, either Health Benefits America or they worked for Infinite Mind for a period. They all kind of did that for a period and learned and then went on and did their own thing or went with other companies. Yeah, so they had a lot of chance to be around me and learn from me, but probably learn what not to do, as much as what to do. But it's an interesting thing, Chris, because I have so many people that know my kids go, how did you raise such hardworking kids an opulent lifestyle. And when I say opulent, if you drove into our home where I raised them for 23 years, it was the old Walker Mansion in Holiday, and one of the most beautiful homes probably in the state, built in the 1800s, but it was a beautiful property with a lot of acreage. So when people drive in, it kind of said, somebody's got money here. And so they always wondered, how did you raise such good kids in that kind of environment? And I said, it's all about what you teach them and what you do with money. I never gave them money, ever. They had to earn it. And I'd give them jobs and I'd say, okay, you clean the pool, and we'd rotate the wheel each month. Somebody'd clean the pool for 4 weeks, and they'd trim lawns. Then somebody would move to cleaning around all the ponds, because we had 3 ponds and a lot of wild Canadian geese that would hang around. So there was always goose poop everywhere. So we had to constantly hose that off. And we had a barn with a lot of animals, and we had to muck stalls, those kind of things. So as we rotated, I'd say, okay, this job is worth $0 to $20. And I'd walk it after, and I'd say, well, that was a lousy job. I don't even know if that's worth $5, kind of thing. Till I taught them, if you do something, you do it well.
We say the same thing. Anything worth doing is worth doing well.
Expect a good job. So you've got to learn to do a good job. And then I always taught them, I always had this saying. I said, the one who does the most wins. I said, it's interesting how some of my boys would stay there. If we came from the lake, stay there till the boat was polished and done, even if it was 11 or 12 at night, and others disappeared, right? And I used to say, you think you're smart when you skip out of things, but you're not. You just are setting the path to be a loser, in my opinion. Because the one who does the most wins, because they're the most motivated. They're the ones that get promoted. They're the ones that succeed in their own businesses. The ones that skip out and don't do anything or end up being on the losing end. And I used to tell them that all the time. If you want to be a winner, do the most.
Short-term easy equals long-term hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That's something I think about on a weekly basis, is how do I raise my kids in a privileged environment, but have them not become spoiled little brats when they grow up, for lack of a better word. And they do chores, and we practice a lot of these same things, but it still worries me. Like I want them to have a good life, but I don't want them to have an unrealistic viewpoint on the world.
Right.
I don't want them to think that this is normal. This is how the whole world is.
My dad taught me this principle, and so I'd say the same thing to them, is ownership is maintenance. When you own things, you have to take care of them. And when Heavenly Father blesses you with things, He expects you to take good care of it, be a good steward. So we not only had a home, we had a cabin at the Brighton Ski Resort, and then a houseboat and a place in St. George. But the main thing we had is a big ranch in Wyoming that has been in the family 100 years about. And I ended up buying out one of my uncles. So when we go up there, we'd work a half day and then play. So they just learned that when you own stuff, you got to take care of it. And that comes first. Once the work's done, then we can play. So it's just what we did. And they kind of learned that's what goes with ownership. I read a book, it was, let me think how long ago, 8 years ago. We were at Lake Powell, and we own a houseboat with 12 families. And so everybody has a week in the summer. And the ownership said, let's save some money instead of hiring all these little repairs done. Let's put a list of what needs to be done, and everybody can sign up for some of it. So the week you're there, you do something to help maintain the boat. So one of them was vacuuming all of the vents and the ceilings that were fabric, because they get dust on them and stuff. So I had signed up for that because that's something I felt like we could do. And we had to do it the week we were there. And Thursday came along and nobody had done it. And they all knew we had to do it. And they're all out water skiing. We all couldn't fit on the water ski boat, so some of us are back there, right? So I thought, well, I'll start. So I get out the shop vac, and I'm standing on a stool vacuuming these ceilings till my arm's ready to fall off. And I'm kind of resenting it. Like, why am I doing all this? And they're out skiing. Nobody's volunteered to do it all week. And there was a book laying on the ottoman. The book's name was The Joy of Less. My daughter-in-law brought it. And I picked it up, and I'm a speed reader, right? I own a speed reading company. So I read that book in like 20 minutes, and it's one of the most life-changing books I've ever read. A switch went on in my mind because it talked about you don't own anything, it owns you. The more stuff you own, the more it preoccupies your money, your time, your energy. When
Mhm.
it's a mess, it creates confusion in the mind. You drive into a messy garage, it says confusion. You go into your walk-in closet, if it's stuff everywhere, it's confusion. You go to your
Mhm.
ranch, if stuff's a mess and all the bikes haven't been cleaned, it creates confusion in your mind. And so, talked about the happiest people are those that learn to get rid of stuff and focus on people, not things.
Mhm.
And I was at the point in my life we'd had all that stuff, and I was like, wow, that's profound. You know what? They're out playing while I'm always working. We had a swimming pool at our last home. I'd gotten in at 6 times in 23 years. They're all out swimming a lot. I'm trimming hedges and blowing up patios and sweeping and cleaning up and pulling weeds. I mean, it was a big place to take care of, and none of them really liked yard work. But I don't mind it. It was kind of healing for me to be out working in the yard.
Same.
So I would spend a lot of time out on the yard. And when I read this book, I realized it was robbing me of the joy to spend with people. When the kids got back, I said, okay, I've got this much done. You guys finish. And so they did. And on the way home, I downloaded the book and said to my wife, you've got to listen to this on the way home. So as it's talking about, I go, see, that's me. It just owns me. That's all I do is fix stuff. I'm done, And she's nodding like she understands, right? So we went to bed that night and I woke up at 4 a.m. It was just heavy on my mind. And so I got up and I hammered out an email to my kids. And I said, I've decided to sell all the following stuff. I'm going to sell the cabin. I'm going to sell the speedboat. I'm going to sell the houseboat. I'm going to sell our house, the ATVs. I'm going to sell a lot of this stuff. So if any of you are interested, let's talk and I'll figure out a way you can buy it.
How old were your kids around this time?
This was just 8 years.
8 years ago. Okay, so
Yeah.
40 to like
Yeah.
25 or so?
Yeah. So I think they had all left home at that point. That's why I felt this way. Here I'm keeping up this place and nobody's there anymore. But the grandkids
Yeah.
love to come over because we have a barn and horses and llamas and fainting goats and all kinds of fun stuff, right? Pickleball court and the pool. And so the kids love to come over. But anyway, so I get up and go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. That was my routine. I did it for years. And when I came back home about 7 in the morning, my wife's standing there in her bathrobe and she goes, can we talk? Yeah, what's up? So we went in the other room, sat down, and she goes, what's this email you wrote? I said, well, it's just what we talked about on the way home yesterday. She said, well, I didn't agree to that. I said, well, you were nodding. And she said, I was a listener. I didn't agree to sell all this stuff. I love this stuff. I love this home. And I said, well, I'm done. And she said, well, aren't I an equal partner? And I go, yeah. And she said, don't I have say? And I go, yeah. But I'm done with writing the checks and I'm done with doing all the work. So if you want to switch roles and you oversee it all and write the checks and do the work, then we'll keep it. So she knew then I was really there. I had decided.
Was there anything that you weren't going to sell?
The
Anything
ranch.
big, or was
The ranch.
the ranch?
Was
But you were going to sell the home you were living in?
Oh,
too?
yeah. And an
Okay.
office I had up Big Cottonwood Canyon, sitting on 7 acres, a big lodge
Okay.
right on the river.
And you were going to downgrade your home?
Yeah, I was just going to simplify everything, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So shortly after that, I put up the house on the market and I met with the kids and they go, Dad, why are you wanting to do this? And I said, because I'm done. I'm just worn out. I'm at the age, I don't want to work every single second. And they said, well, you don't ever do anything anymore. Let's just divvy it up. We'll each take assignments on whatever we own. Somebody will be in charge of the snowmobiles and the four-wheelers, keeping them up. Somebody will be in charge of the St. George home, somebody the Brighton cabin, somebody the ranch, and one of the boys will kind of help whoever needs it. So, and we can rotate. And I said, okay, but nobody's living in this home but your mom and I, so I'm selling it, because you guys can't take care of this. So put up the house for sale. Didn't sell at first, and then we got a call from somebody who wanted to buy it, and so we ended up selling it. And my wife was really sad. I mean, really sad. And we found a house in Draper, and it's beautiful, and it had just what we needed, and it was within 10, 12 minutes of all of our kids. And she still wasn't happy, and I think she wasn't going to be happy. She had made up her mind. She was not going to be happy about this.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of dug in her heels. And I think when one of the grandkids came over and said, this is great. We all live close enough we can ride our bikes over and see you all the time. And we lived like 25 minutes away from any of them. So we didn't see them but once a week, maybe. And that's when the light went on for her that, oh, maybe this is a good thing. Now, if you
Mhm.
ask her, she loves this house. It's a lot more light, it's more modern, it's bright, it's cheery. The other one was a very traditional home built in the 1800s. It's like going into the
Mm.
Salt Lake Temple. It was built
Hmm.
by the same workers that did the temple.
Oh, wow.
Colors
Wow.
were the same, gold leaf ceiling, stained glass windows. I mean, it was beautiful, but it was dark. Textured yellow, kind of heavy textured walls and stuff. And so once she moved, she loved it and realized this was the right thing. So
Yeah.
it turned out to be a blessing. And now the kids take care of everything. I don't take care of anything. So it was
Wow.
a handoff, but it had to get to that point where I was just done. And then they all realized, ooh, we're going to lose all this stuff if we don't. And they're great about it. None of them ever complain. They're checking on it all the time. They've really moved it up a notch. And so
Yeah.
it's been a blessing. So now I enjoy going places because I don't have to take care of them all.
That's a great story. That is such a unique, interesting story. What did you replace that time with that you spent fixing all those things?
Well, I still have three companies, as well as I sit on 8 boards. Like I just finished my second round as chairman of the board of the aquarium here in Salt Lake. Been on Health Center Theater, Weber States board for 26 years, UVU's board, Millie Princess Foundation. Anyway, just a lot of things like that. So it takes a lot of time. For years, I chaired the Utah Parkinson's Disease Association and American Lung Association. So I've done a lot of different charitable things since I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I always believed in giving back. So I've always
Yeah.
been involved in charities and serving others. And so I taught that to my kids. So they're all involved in some way in charities, which is really good. Some of them have their own.
That's incredible. What did you do when your kids were in the home to help make your family close? I'm assuming your kids are close. At least 5 of them live nearby. How intentional was that as they were growing up? And what did you do?
Well, what happened is in 1992, I had this big company going, and it was growing really fast. At the time, we had like 600 employees, but by the time I sold it in 96, we had 1,400 employees, including all of our call center people, 600 full-time and 800 part-time on phones. But I had been invited by Layton Construction. They had built 3 office buildings for me because we were growing so fast. And they invited me to go on a fishing trip to the Wind Rivers, all their top clients. And it was a horseback trip into the Wind Rivers. So I love that because I've been raised on horses. I took with me a couple books because I knew I'm not going to stand at a lake all day long and cast a line at it. I'm too ADHD for that. I can do that for about an hour, and then I'm ready for something else, right? So I brought a book about reorganizing your company for success. Back in the 90s, it was all about you come up with a mission statement, you do it with your executives, then you come up with your values, and then your action items to get there. And as I was reading that book, I had this strong impression, this feeling, a voice came into my mind and said, you need to do this for your own family. Focus on your family. And if you do it in your family, everything at work will follow. So start it with your family. And so I ran back to camp. I was sitting up on the mountain overlooking the lake in the sunshine, and I was just reading this book. And so I ran back to camp and got my scriptures and a yellow pad. And I came back and I would read my scriptures for a while, and all these things would come to my mind. And it really didn't have anything to do with the scriptures I was reading. It just opened up a conduit to revelation or spirituality or promptings, whatever you want to call it, inspiration. And so I sat down and decided 5 areas I wanted to focus on. And that was my family, and set goals for family, on my faith, my fitness, my what my financial goals were. I wanted life to be fun and make sure everything we were doing, we were enjoying. And then fitness, just my health, overall health and fitness. So I sat down and set goals in these 5 areas. And I decided what we needed to do. So on financial, I wanted to get to a place where I could get out of the travel all the time. At some point when the company's ready, sell it and be able to spend more quality time at home. Because I was gone every other week for 13 years. And that was after I sold it. I had to stay and run it for a few years. That was the agreement when I sold it to ADP. So I'd been traveling a lot, and I wanted to cut back the travel so I was home with family more. And then weekends, I was always doing church work and working, cleaning the barn and feeding the horses and everything. So I wasn't spending much one-on-one time with them. But what I did do is we had what we called the reading couch. And from the time they were little, every night around 8:30 or 9, I'd sit down on the couch with them and read to them or tell them stories. So they all know my stories of when I was a little boy or exploring Camel Cave or these really epic stories, right? So they now have me tell them to the grandkids all the time. They all want to hear them. But I would tell them stories or read with them scriptures for kids, scripture stories with pictures, or great books like Richest Man in Babylon. I had a summary of it, and I would tell them that story about Arcad and how he became the richest man in Babylon. So I would always teach them principles on the reading couch. I think that was the one key thing you just asked is how did you keep them together? We did that every night. The other thing we did is dinner was at 6:00 every night. And the weeks I was home, I left the office home at 6 to have dinner with the family. And back then we didn't have cell phones, so that wasn't an issue, putting cell phones away during dinner. Now we do that. We don't allow cell phones in the kitchen during dinner. But we tried scripture study too with our kids. We'd get them up early in the morning. That didn't work. They're grumbling. They're rolled up in blankets with it over their head, whatever. That didn't work. We tried doing it at nights. That didn't work because they're falling asleep or the little kids had to go to bed. So we finally decided what we would do is dinner every night right at 6, at 6:30, we would get out the scriptures and read one chapter. So we'd go around, everybody would have to read 2 verses. Pretty soon they caught on to that and they'd count when theirs were going to be and then doze off or just space out and then know when it got to them they had to read these 2 scriptures. So we changed it, and whoever read last would call on the next person to read the next 2 verses. So it just became, so they had to stay alert. We read the scriptures from 1992 on until they all left home. We'd read them every night. And that worked for us. And they all got to know the scriptures. And then we bought them living scriptures. Originally, it was cassette tapes and had them listen to those at night. And they all did that. And so they all learned the scripture stories. And then when they later came out as DVDs, animated, we bought those. So they had watched all the stories from Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon, and American heroes. So they kind of knew history. They knew their scriptures. So at church, my kids all knew the scripture stories. They could answer pretty much any question. So here's the key for everybody listening. Is it's no different than training a dog. We got a puppy a year ago. People see our dog and say, where did you ever get this dog? It just obeys everything your wife says. I said, because she's consistent. Everything she does is consistent. If she says, no, you can't go out until your homework's done, you can beg, plead, cry. At the grocery store, you want candy? She goes, we don't buy candy. You could scream and cry, but she would never do it. So our kids didn't ever do that because they knew once she said it, she was constant. And parents that wait till their kids pride long enough and then give them whatever they want, all they've done is reinforce that behavior. They don't realize it, but they just want that pain and that noise to go away, so they give in. But what they don't realize is if you'll learn to be constant and saying no and yes at the right times, after a while, your kids don't play those games because they know you're constant. So I would say that to people. The reason our kids are so successful is my wife. You know, she's an educator. She's very structured. You can watch what she's doing and look at, and just watching what she's doing, you know what time of day it is because she does certain things every day. She does her exercise, her scripture study. I mean, she does Duolingo every day. She's done it for years, never misses.
What language?
She's really, really structured. And I think that's why our kids turned out so good is they had structure. They knew the rules. They knew what they had to do to go out and play. They knew they had to play every hymn in the hymn book to get a driver's license. So they all play the piano. So there was that structure. And I tell people that have young kids, you know, when your kids are young, it's really hard. Every day is hard. There's noise, there's confusion, there's constant picking up after them, fixing meals, doing laundry. I mean, there's just no end. Going to all of their sports games, going to their school activities. You are going nonstop when you have young kids. I said the days seem long, but the Christmases go fast. And before you know it, they're out of the house. So even though the days seem long, know that the years go fast. Pretty soon they'll be gone. So don't put off what you can't do later, which is teach them correct principles.
I was on a walk with my wife just this morning, and we were talking about our kids. We have 4 kids, and they're 6 years apart. So 18 plus 6 is 24. We have 24 years with our kids in the house.
Right.
And my oldest is almost 16. So I said, babe, like, we're almost 2/3 done. Like I'm 39. We're almost 2/3 done with our kids in the house. And
Yeah.
I just had this jolt of panic, like, oh my gosh, like it's so scary to think of that. Like, cause we are enjoying it. It is hard. We do love it, but it's going so fast. It's unbelievable. And your story of reading the book by the lake, like I had a similar story just this morning. I was reading my scriptures and my son wanted to go to cross country camp and he was praying about it. And we didn't really want him to go, but there's good kids and we didn't really have a good reason to tell him no. And we said, choice is yours, pray about it. He's been praying about it. And then through this seemingly random series of events, he got invited to this LDS humanitarian trip in Fiji. Like I texted, like I had the thought to text this woman in our ward and I did. And she said, there's this trip, but it closes today. And I told it to my oldest and shockingly, he was thrilled about it, which is not like him. And so we booked it. Like this all happened in the last 6 hours.
Wow.
And none of this had anything to do with the scriptures I was reading. But the inspiration to text this woman came as I was reading the scriptures. And it was just incredible. I'm grateful for those moments.
A lot of inspiration comes when you read them. It opens up that conduit. It's usually nothing about what you're reading.
No. You mentioned ADHD. I'm diagnosed ADHD. And I have a very hard time focusing when I'm reading. Like it's almost impossible for me to really lock in on what I'm reading. But over the years, like I've just thought, doesn't matter. If you get something out of it, great. If you don't, fine. Just keep reading.
Well, Chris, for you and your listeners, this will really make a difference. I have ADHD myself, right? Hard to stay focused on. So I'm ideas all the time. And I'm go, really type A. And very outgoing. I love people. I'd rather be with people than reading, right? In 96, the year I sold my company, I came across this program in Japan. It was speed reading. And I started doing it. And it was in Japanese, but I served a mission in Japan. And it changed my world. I went from being a very slow, terrible reader. I'd get to the bottom of the page and not remember one thing I'd read, but I'd seen every word. And I did this and it changed my world so that within a few months, I was reading, 700 words a minute instead of 170. So I could read a book in a couple hours. And so it changed me to become a very voracious reader. I like to read. Now it's harder to sit down and read a book because there's so much to follow on social media. You get caught up in that. So you almost have to set aside 20 minutes a day just to read and then read from really good books. And so what I did is I've had this speed reading company since 2000. I was on an infomercial for 7 years with it, and we sold 1 million copies of this.
Was that the speed reading infomercial that I saw as a kid?
Yeah.
There's only one?
Well, I think there might have been more than one, but I had the one called IQ Advantage. And Pam Dauber, who was Mindy and Mork and Mindy, she hosted the show with me because she used it with her kids. And she called me and said, how can I help you sell this? It's made a huge difference for my kids. So during COVID, kids aren't reading. They're not going to school. And if you pull it up on AI, it'll tell you all kids that were going to school through COVID, they're 7 months to a year behind on reading because they didn't do it during COVID, a lot of them. So I decided to make a free version of it. It's in the App Store. It's called Infinite Mind Brain Exercises. Everybody should download it right now. 7 minutes a day. It'll make such a difference in your life, Chris, on how much you read. Because once you read fast, you're able to stay very focused and your ADHD goes out the window. Because once you read fast, you're very, very focused. Because one thing about ADHD is you can have super focus when you want it.
Yes. It's either no focus or all focus. What happens to comprehension? Does it drop? And if so, by how much?
When you're focused, your comprehension goes way up. By 62% is the average. Because I have everybody's data. We collect it, right? So I can tell you exactly how fast second graders are reading, what their comprehension is, and then we could track it by number of sessions. So after they've done 40 sessions, most people will read 3 times faster with 60% higher comprehension.
So what's the trade-off, right? Because I like to say there are no solutions, only trade-offs. What do people have to give to get this back, right? Certainly there's... Right.
It's like anything else. Anybody who's good, you look at these athletes who are getting gold medals right now. How many hours have they spent? You hear it's a 10,000-hour rule. To be really good at something, you got to give it 10,000 hours. Ours, you do it 40 times 7 minutes. It's less than 3 hours of total training in 2 months. Wow. It's nothing. It's like Duolingo. So it's consistency. The ones who get really good are the ones who do it for a long time.
I'm sold. I just downloaded the app.
And what we did it was on our kids' chore chart, and they got so much. The kids in grade school got so much every time they did it. I think it was 50 cents or quarter, I can't remember. And then it was 50 cents for junior high and $1 for the kids that were in high school for every time they did it. And if they had a perfect month, we'd double it.
And they can do all that through the app?
Homework, they had piano practicing, they had something for each thing, and each one had a dollar value. And every night when they go to bed, they'd have to write down which of those things they accomplished. And then at the end of the night, my wife, when they'd gone to bed, put a red line through it. So if they had not filled it out, they couldn't come later at the end of the week and say, oh, I did it all every day, because they don't remember. So they had to be a return and report every night. And if they didn't get credit. So they learned to fill out their chore chart every night before they went to bed. And she'd remind them a lot. But because of that, my daughter was super motivated, because she was really motivated to have a perfect score. She's like my wife. She's very structured, does everything right. And so she would do it because she'd want to double everything on her allowance. So she'd do everything. And she's the one that reads at 1,400 words a minute and teaches calculus up at Redmond High in Seattle. She did. And now she's a stay-at-home mom. She just tutors on the side. But during COVID, she read 420 books in 1 year during COVID.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And because she could read more than one book a day. She was nursing a baby, and she said, I could get through a book in 3 nursings because she reads fast.
Yeah.
You ask her anything, she can answer it, how to do it. She doesn't even have to look it up on AI, most things. She reads so much, she's just extremely smart.
What negative qualities did you see in your children as you were raising them that didn't turn out to be true? You know, I have some kids that have a natural work ethic, some kids that don't.
Yeah.
That worries me. But then I talk to other parents and they're like, oh, they're fine. Like they turned out fine.
Yeah, mine all turned out
fine. Did you have
fine.
kids like that?
One of them would try to skip out on everything. That's why I came up with the thing, the one who does the most wins. And when somebody skips out, in my opinion, they're just on the way to be a loser. Well, I had one son that doesn't really like manual labor. He'd always figure out a smarter, faster way to do everything. And he's got probably the best job. You know, he goes out and develops land. And so he can ride his bike every day, he can be with his kids. He's really structured and he does very well. So you kind of have to realize everyone is different, and you can't ever think this kid's going to be a loser, because you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
I had another boy that just nothing mattered. It doesn't matter. I don't need to make my bed. I get in it again. So it was just always a fight with his mom, right? He's the one that went to Oxford and graduated really great grades. I mean, so when you teach them those basic principles, you teach them the principles, and then at some point they've got to govern themselves, right? But it's surprising, even though you don't think they're listening, they learn. And I think it surprises you how good they turn out, most kids. The ones that don't, I talk to parents who are struggling with their kids. It's the ones that let them live on their cell phones and just play on them all day and get on games and stay up all night playing Warcraft or whatever they play. That's a very dangerous thing. So our kids don't let their kids be on cell phones more than an hour a day. They really regulate it. If the kids are on the phone, say, okay, let's go do something fun. Go out in the yard and play. They don't let them sit on phones. And so our grandkids are all doing great because they don't play on their cell phones a lot. And parents think you've just got to be consistent from the day one. There's kids that live on their cell phones generally don't do well in school. They fight depression. They compare themselves to everyone else. It's not a healthy place. So we're going to limit it. That's how it is in our home. We don't want you to be depressed and unhappy. So we're going to limit cell phone use.
How did you deal with like testimony issues with your teenagers or kids as they were in the house? Or did you deal with those at all? Did you have children that really struggled with their testimony or with behavioral issues that ended up? I know they all turned out okay, but what was that like?
I don't know. I worried about some of them. Some of them had long hair when they were in high school or colored hair. And I just realized you choose your battles. I was just glad they were at church, so I didn't say anything about their hair. But they all ended up, all the boys went on missions and they were great. Would just say, really, it's your choice in life. This is a really good road because it'll set you on a great path, but it's up to you. And it should go because you want to go. And it's a good thing for you, and God will bless you in your life for doing it. I really believe that. So luckily they all went, and people go, was it hard to see your kids go? on missions? I said some of them. Some of them wasn't hard because
Yeah.
some of them were
And
punks, right? But
yeah.
we love them all and they're great. And the ones that I kind of worried about are the most incredible dads. They're just incredible. So I'm
Yeah.
really happy with the outcome. And they're all active in the church to this day. So somewhere they realized the importance of it. And I think they see how close our family is. You ask, is your family close now? Well, yeah. We have Sunday dinner every other Sunday at our house. We do a family vacation or cruise every other Thanksgiving where we all go. The cousins all know their cousins' best friends. They all ski together. They all do things together. So really, really close family. In fact, if
Yeah.
anybody misses out, they all get FOMO. They don't like to miss out on one of the families doing things. So we're really lucky that way.
Did you do anything to help facilitate or foster your kids being close with each other, like after they left the house, or was it really just you trying to be close as a family?
Well, it's really interesting because some of them are closer in age and they kind of hung together growing up. And others are best friends, like my oldest boy with my fourth son. They do a lot together because they have similar interests. So it didn't become an age thing as they got older. It's just kind of, oh, they like to golf, we'll go golf. Or today we're going to go ride ATVs or mountain bikes, and they'll all do that, whoever likes that. So they kind of mix it up and they still do a lot together. Their big thing is they have an annual surf trip to California and they have an annual trip where they go hella skiing in Canada. And they all do
That's
that
cool.
together.
What was your most joyful memory when your kids were in the house?
I think it was every day when we had dinner together and we'd go around and people would talk about their day. I just loved that. I really enjoyed that.
Mhm.
That made me really happy. And I think the happiest times were when I saw each one of them find a really good spouse. Those were really happy times because I felt like I've done my job now, turn it over to the spouse. They can do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
But those were happy days too. Yeah.
Do you remember any particularly painful moments as a parent?
Yeah, there was a few times where I really lost it as a dad that I look back and wished I had had better control because I'd get so mad. I'd be yelling, almost frothing at the mouth like a madman. And
Mhm.
what usually drove that, it only happened a few times, and it didn't happen with all of them. It happened with a couple of them, right? Is disrespecting their mom. And I would come home and my wife's in tears because they're not minding and they're being sassy to her or mouthy to her. And I would lose it. That's
Yeah.
the only times I would lose it is when they were really rough on their mom. I didn't have a lot of tolerance for that. And I remember when I was on trips, sometimes I'd call home and Nancy would say, so and so's, I'd get him on the phone. Do you want me to kick your butt all the way around the block when I get home? I mean, I look back and I don't know. I wasn't a very patient dad. And I look at my boys, they're way more patient with their kids. I don't see them yelling. I wished I could have done that differently, but that's kind of how it was when I grew up. My dad got mad, he'd
Yeah.
yell at us or spank us, right? And this generation, they say, spare the rod, spoil the child. I kind of at times have thought these guys should be stricter with their kids, but I don't say anything. And their kids have turned out great. So it's a little different model nowadays than what we grew up with.
Yeah. One question we ask every parent is do you regret being too strict or not strict enough to your kids?
Well, I think it was perfect because we were consistent. They knew what was right and wrong, and they knew what would get their dad mad. They knew. I just wish sometimes I hadn't lost it so much, that I'd just
Yeah.
taken a breather, go to the gym, for a hike, go for a drive to the store, go get an ice cream, something until I settled down because there was times I got really mad
Yeah.
and I wished I hadn't. So I would say to parents, if you're ever losing it, take a break because if an hour later you're not as mad and you can be more rational with kids and they don't remember that hateful feeling that they get from you where you act like you hate them.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed when I get mad at my kids is it's usually much more correlated to something at work or an email I got, something that has nothing to do with them. Because there'll be other times when they do the same misbehavior and I'm in a really good place. I'm in a great mood in the moment and I don't really get that mad. And it's like, I guess it's more about me than them. I'm struggling with something.
Yeah, I think that's true. Because the times I got mad is usually when I was overwhelmed. I had so much going on, I didn't have time for that to deal
Yeah.
with them
Yeah.
being disrespectful. So I think it was when I was overwhelmed. And I think that's why grandparents are so much better with grandkids. They're past that really stressful point where you're trying to get into a home, you're trying to make a living, trying to pay bills. Something's broken, the washing machine's broken. How are we going to pay for it? I mean, we have all been through years like that. I went through a lot of years like that. When we started the company, we weren't taking big salaries. So it didn't matter where I was. I could be in church, I could be in the temple, and I'm sitting there thinking of what bill do I have to pay next? Which one can I wait on? I had years like that. And
Yeah.
so I think as you get older and your financial stress goes down and your stress at work, you become a really rational human being.
Yeah.
You're really nice to your grandkids.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun time.
If you were to ascribe a percentage to nature and nurture, how much would you assign to each when it comes to your children?
Well, I think there's a certain amount that naturally some kids are born on a spectrum with autism or whatever. Some kids are born not with the same intellect. So I think I would say 65-35. I think 65% is your nurturing, how you raise kids. I think 35% is you're not going to change it. They're coming a certain way, but I think you have more influence than not.
Yeah. I like that. I think I'm somewhere in there. I had the thought recently, I wonder if the Lord sends kids that need more nurturing to the parents that are able to provide more nurturing, and the kids that have more nature to the parents that aren't able to provide as much nurturing, right?
Yeah, I kind of think you're right because I've got kids who have got some of their kids are on the spectrum and they're way more patient than I'd be. Some of them have been through really hard things, like we lost a granddaughter to leukemia and she was sick for 4 years. And I just
Mm.
watched what a toll that put on my son and his wife. Really hard. What good came out of it is they started the Millie Princess Foundation and they've helped hundreds of families financially and tried to not only save their kid when they're diagnosed with cancer, they go visit them and said, "We're here to help save your marriage and your family. And
Wow.
we're here to help you financially so you're not so stressed." So they
Yeah.
give them that moral support, they give them financial support. So when I look at what good things my kids have done when they've gone through hard things, then I look back and say, maybe there was a reason they went through that because the influence
Yeah.
they could have on so many others. You really only can be a huge person of influence if you've been through something hard yourself. And so you have the compassion, the empathy to come and really know they need help.
How would you say the strength of your marriage was while your kids were in the home? Did you and your wife ever struggle, or was it pretty solid?
Yeah, it was pretty solid. I mean, there's times everybody in marriage goes, "What the heck? Why did I marry this person?" I'm sure everybody's had that at points because there's times when you're both so stressed that you start getting on each other's nerves, I think. So I think that's natural. I don't know anybody who doesn't have some of that, right? So I say that's part of I watch people who get divorced and over half the time they marry somebody else and realize I just got a new set of problems, it's just different. And I probably should have stayed and made it work because of the impact it had on my kids. So I tell people try to work it out because the impact to kids is way bigger than you think when you get
Yeah.
divorced.
Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with that maybe we didn't cover today? Any advice or counsel?
Couples your age, especially that have got kids at home or if they're divorced and a single parent, I tell them you should come to my mastermind because I teach those principles that I came up with in 1992, the goals in each area. So I teach it. It's called Zenith Mastermind. They can find it under zenithmastermind.com. If they're in Utah or Salt Lake area, we do a meeting every other month in Sandy, and I bring in great speakers of people who have really excelled in certain areas. Most of them have had successful businesses, raised great kids. They're strong in their faith. They're still married. I bring in the ones who have made it that can share, just like we're doing today. They can share how they did it, and then it opens up to Q&As at the end. And people come away just enlightened because they come as couples. So they're both listening to the same message so they can go home and talk about it. Whereas if one spouse goes to something and comes home and they're telling the other spouse about it, the other spouse is like, whatever. But if you're there together, and we do a retreat once a year. Our retreat is to Dominican Republic, March 8th through 13th. We have 45 people coming. We do those once a year, and they're game changers for couples, especially, or singles that are raising kids that come back with so many ideas of how to make
Yeah.
life better. So I recommend reinvest in yourself, put a little time and money into strengthening your marriage, strengthening your family situation, your faith, whatever you need on the balance wheel. We call it the balance wheel. And you go in and you answer questions in each area, and it scores you on the balance wheel and shows you where you're out of balance. So then you kind of set goals in those areas so you can get better and better.
That's amazing. Thank you. We'll link to that. Zenith-mastermind.com. Thank you, Jeff. This was incredible. I learned a lot from me, and I'm sure that our viewers and our listeners will learn a lot as well. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Great.